Welcome to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. Established in 2016, the Fintech Times is a global multimedia news outlet centered around the world's first leading fintech newspaper. We report on the latest and brightest ideas from the fintech world. Follow the conversation using hashtag TFD News and Views and follow us at the Fintech Times. Hello, and welcome back to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. I am here as ever with Francis and Tom. How are you guys doing this week? How's it been for you?
Doing very well. I feel like I always say the same thing at the beginning of the podcast, but we've had a very good week yet again. And we're excited to get into the podcast again today.
Awesome stuff. And Francis, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing very well. It's been an exciting week for me because I'm actually moving house. So a bit manic, but it's exciting times. And yeah, it's like Tom said, we've had a very interesting week here at the Fintech Times. So looking forward to some of the discussions that we're going to be having today.
Awesome stuff. Well, guys, what are we going to be talking about today? What articles have you brought with you? Francis, what are we discussing?
So this week I'm going to be talking about the latest face authentication innovation from the Lithuanian regtech iDenfy.
Fantastic stuff. And Tom, how about you? What are you bringing?
So this week, TSB has launched a new service to help victims of domestic abuse in the UK, and I'm going to be taking a look into that.
Very interesting. And I'm going to be talking about allpay's new staff reward gift card. So quite a different set of articles here today. Tom, I'm going to let you go first because your article has piqued my interest. So why don't you take it away?
Absolutely. So, as I said, TSB has launched what it calls an Emergency Flee Fund on its video banking platform for victims of domestic abuse in the UK. And that's something that 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men experience in their lifetimes, according to the National Centre for Domestic Violence. Now, essentially, this fund is going to offer TSB customers payments of up to £500 to help them escape a dangerous or abusive relationship. And then those people can then use these funds to help them pay for essentials such as food, travel and accommodation to escape their current situation. So while the service is new to its video banking platform, customers can also request an emergency call via telephone or visit a branch to receive this support. When they're visiting a bank branch, they can be met by specially trained individuals who can spot signs of domestic abuse and assess the specific needs of each person. Now, what I found really interesting in the article was Lisa Johnson, who's the head of the survivor services at Women's Aid. And she explained that the situation for many victims of domestic abuse has become a lot more difficult due to the cost of living crisis. As the cost of living independently has gone up, it's skyrocketed in the last few years. And in many cases, the perpetrator of this often controls the finances of the victim, meaning they don't have any ways to access the funds required to get them out of the situation. And one of the largest barriers to this is finance. So TSB has also updated its ID and verification acceptance process to support accounts openings by helping vulnerable people access banking services without full documentation, which, as you can imagine, could be vital for many victims of this. And really the reason I wanted to bring this to the podcast is because it's obviously something that could positively impact a huge amount of people. And it's a reminder of how, I guess, fintechs and banks can offer services that in some cases can be life-saving for people. So obviously I want to get your guys' take on this. Just find out what is your immediate reaction to the news. Are there any ways that you think this could be improved, or are there similar services you want to see introduced for other situations? Polly, I'll come to you first. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly have nothing but good things to say about this service. I think this is a really great example of, a finance company or a fintech, whatever you want to call it. This is a really great example of a finance company getting involved and actually making a difference. Like, it's almost like they have identified an issue, and it's not even necessarily an issue that is within their, remit. You know what I mean? Like, it's nothing necessarily to do with the bank, but it's identified an issue that faces people and has come up with a solution to help. And I think it is honestly so important. And like you were saying, when it comes to fleeing domestic abuse, domestic violence situations, a lot of the time it is money that stops people being able to leave and being able to leave safely. So the fact that TSB is providing customers with the funds to be able to get out and get safe, I think is just so important. And honestly, I genuinely think it's just absolutely fantastic. And to see that they're helping so many people, and I'm sure, 23 a month probably doesn't sound like a very big number, but actually that is huge. And that is 23 people who are now safe from domestic abuse. And I think that alone is absolutely amazing, that they are helping people get through that and helping people to leave situations, where they are being abused. So, I think this is such a really fantastic thing. I really hope a lot more people get involved and like offer their own kind of things. And also even like the video banking feature, I think is just so clever and it's so good, and it's just showing you that fintech can really do good. And I know it's something that we talk about a lot, but like financial tech, it can really make such a big difference. And I think it can make a lot of difference in areas that you don't necessarily expect. I don't think anyone would necessarily think a bank is going to help solve an issue for domestic abuse survivors. Like, I don't think that was necessarily on anyone's bingo card, but it has, and it has found a way to help in a way that it knows how to, and actually make significant differences. So I think being able to access this fund, being able to, use it, and the fact that they're having so many people use it is just phenomenal. And even to the point of like offering safe spaces in branches and things like that, helping people access support through charities or like phoning hotlines. I can't say enough good things about it. And I think being able to help people in such a way that is so important, it's so wonderful. So I do really applaud TSB for doing this and doing it well, and not sort of, doing it half-heartedly or lip services. I know, sometimes it can be at risk of things for doing. But yeah, I'm really, really happy to see solutions like this. I'm really happy to see big fintech companies, big finance companies, big banks actually looking at their community and figuring out where they can make a difference. And I just hope a lot of people follow its lead, because it's phenomenal. It's just fantastic. And I don't really have a lot to say about it really, other than I think it's great. So yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you're saying there. I also think it's a really important and just positive bit of news. And I think the point you made about the video banking aspect of it is really important as well. Really ensuring that it's accessible to the most amount of people that it can help and support. And also the fact that, they've got this new account opening procedure to help people open accounts without the full documentation, which again is just helping to improve accessibility for people in this situation and make it easier for them to access this service. And yeah, I also just I've got plenty of good things to say about it. They say that, it had the Flee Fund in 2023 as well, and that was seeing an average of 16 victims a month being supported, and that's risen to 23 a month so far in 2024. So again, it's just a case of the more people that know about it and are aware of it, the more people that are able to make use of it. And yeah, I think it's a really good bit of news, and it's always good to see a sort of a positive thing that fintech can do in society that isn't necessarily boosting profit margins for banks and fintechs, but just doing good for people. But obviously, Francis, I want to get your take on this. What are you thinking about it?
Yeah, I want to just completely echo everything both of you have really said, but I like that last point that you made just there, Tom, which was, this is more than just about making a profit. It's about really helping people who need help. And I think it's a really fantastic service, sort of as Polly was saying. I think what really stands out to me from this is just how accessible it really is now as well. You can get it through the video banking platform, over the telephone, or just by even going into a branch. People, like the employees there, are aware of how to spot signs of domestic abuse and to be then able to offer sort of services and help, really. And it's just a really, really, I think you have the important thing as well. The importance of it can't sort of be diminished by like how impactful I guess it is as well, because we're saying how great and fantastic it is, but it's such an important lifeline for some people, because as you guys both mentioned, a lot of the time the victims and the survivors are those that they don't have control over their funds, and they must feel extremely trapped. I can't imagine what it would feel like, but it must just be like they've got nowhere to turn. And being able to be given as much money as TSB is offering, and to provide accommodation and to really act as a lifesaver, I suppose, really. And I just think it's fantastic, and I really hope that more people really take it up. I mean, it's sad to see that, I suppose. Like, there's two ways of looking at it. There's the side of more people are taking advantage of the of the service, which means, you know, more people are actually becoming free of these horrible situations that they might find themselves in. But then the sad reality of it is, you know, there's still more of these cases going on. The sad reality of it is there's more cases going on that we, you know, that haven't been brought up, that people haven't come forward yet. And I think that's a really sad, you know, but it's the reality of it. And I think the more that people become aware of these services, especially like TSBs, and hopefully we'll see more banks and fintechs really pick it up as well. But I think that will be a really big way to sort of encourage people and, you know, these survivors to really help themselves. And I think, all in all, I think it's a really, really good service.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything both of you have said. Obviously, we all agree it's a fantastic service. And like both of you said, let's just hope that more banks and fintechs can see this kind of service and echo it themselves, offering their own sort of support and, you know, just getting this kind of support out to as many people as possible, not only in the UK, but elsewhere in the world as well. So, yeah, it's obviously a good bit of news, and hopefully there's something that can grow over time as well. But I think we've wrapped that up very nicely. And how about, Francis, we go to your article next?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I mentioned earlier, this week I'm going to be talking about iDenfy and its new Face Authentication service to weed out fraudsters in user onboarding. Because onboarding needs to be a quick and seamless process for organizations to ensure customers have the best experience when joining a new financial firm. I mean, everyone wants to make sure that they're joining an organization which is secure and you know, it always helps when you can see the security measures in place. But there's a fine line. I mean, I think we discussed it last week of there being slightly too much, that things then become a little bit labored and you think, oh, come on, like, I just want to be signed up to this now. Like, there's enough with the security checks. But it's an essential part that needs to happen, and the more that it can sort of happen in the background without interfering with users, the better it is. And I think that's really what the new service from iDenfy is going to be doing. So it's going to be shortening down verification times to up to 15 seconds, and it ensures a high level of security, making it an essential tool for businesses that prioritize compliance and user experience. So face authentication allows platforms to create a more secure network by flagging suspicious activities in real time. And in turn, this will help prevent fraud at every stage of the customer journey. So the solution works by comparing the customer's live face with a reference image. And this process involves AI-driven information extraction by reading the data from the customer's ID document. And the extracted information then verifies the authenticity of the face. So using iDenfy's advanced facial recognition technology, the customer's live face is automatically analyzed and matched to the photo on their ID document, authenticating and confirming they are indeed the person they claim to be. So according to iDenfy, one of its key features is its face matching capability. And after successfully onboarding a new customer, businesses can use this feature to re-verify the customer's identity at any point in their life cycle. And this ongoing due diligence process is crucial to ensure that businesses continue to meet their KYC regulatory requirements. Now, I think the main reason this article stood out to me is because we've heard a lot about AI and deepfakes and how people are trying to make or impersonate others with technology nowadays. I mean, this wasn't something that we probably saw that much of 2-3 years ago, or at least definitely not at the way we do now. But yeah, with the growing number of sort of deepfakes and the emergence of AI by fraudsters, it seems like you need to have constant checks throughout a customer life cycle, because I feel like it would be so easy for a criminal to sort of slip between the cracks, as it were, because it's just so accessible for criminals to get that technology now. And it's so advanced that if organizations aren't using the best sort of regulatory and sort of compliance checks on their customers, then, you know, it would be very easy for a fraudster to take advantage of it. So I wanted to get your guys' views in that. Do you agree that constant checks throughout the customer's sort of life cycle with the organization is needed? And do you think, because in my opinion, AI has been a big cause for these needed checks, do you agree that AI is the biggest reason that a constant check is needed, or do you think there's something else that's really propelling iDenfy's new solution? Tom, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, I do think it's a really interesting topic because, as you said, it's kind of battling an area. When in the age of deep fakes and AI, it's a very new kind of technology that fraudsters are utilizing in order to gain access to different services illegally and things like that. And I think it's just an important technology that will continue being advanced to try and combat that. And whether customers are going to be happy with the sort of re-verification across the life cycle of a product, it will be seen. It depends on how seamless that kind of re-verification process is. But I do think it's a positive way. Any way that they can reduce the impact of fraudsters and utilizing technology like deepfakes for their purposes, I think is always going to be positive. And as always, we talk about the balance between being seamless for the customer and yet also giving the company enough information to make the correct decisions and to keep their customers safe. So I think this is trying to strike a balance, perhaps slightly more. They're trying to consider the customer, but equally, there are sort of potential points of friction that could occur. We'll see over time how they kind of approach that. But I still am of the opinion that you do need levels of friction in order to ensure that customers are kept safe. And if you do have a completely seamless customer experience and onboarding, then I do think there's always going to be opportunities for fraudsters to slip through the cracks and to make use of that. So yeah, I think it's a positive kind of step forward, and this is the kind of technology that probably we're going to see more and more of in the next couple of years, and it will just be interesting to see how different firms try and strike that balance.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're definitely right in the idea that we can't have a completely frictionless onboarding process and sort of verification process, because as a consumer, I think you value your own security as well. And if you're not having these checks, it's, as you said, like anyone could really be taking advantage of a solution. I think what will be interesting is the solution does say, or the face authentication, I should say, will only take up to 15 seconds according to iDenfy. So hopefully it will be more like trying to activate your phone on Apple Wallet or something like that. That it should hopefully be something quite seamless, because it is an automatic check that that works with the already approved ID document that they have on the system. I think what will be interesting is if there's a fail for whatever reason, when it is a legitimate person and whatever they're being verified for, there's a mistake that comes up. I'm intrigued to sort of know what the process will be to verify that, or not verify, to correct and make sure that the customer does end up, because I think that process will then be quite lengthy, and I think that might be where loyalty and customer retention might be called into question. But Polly, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't have too much to add from what you guys have already said. I think you've both summed it up really nicely. I think my sort of major point was kind of going to bounce off what you just said there now, Francis, is I'm really intrigued to know, A, how good it is, and B, if there is a mistake or an issue with whatever reason, what happens then? Obviously, if it is a legitimate issue or a legitimate case of fraud or a fake being used, I'd imagine it just kind of like stops you using the service or something like that. But I'd love to know how it sort of goes about the next step of you've had a fail, and then what? I guess it passes you to a more traditional verification method. I don't know. But no, I think it's really interesting. I think, obviously it's balancing that key of safety versus security, right? Like you need to have precisely the right level of friction in order to have a solution that customers are going to like, they're going to want to use, and it's not going to hamper their experience, because that at the end of the day is the big thing that I think you kind of have to think about when it comes to this kind of solution, as you guys have already said. So I think being able to do things really quickly, 15 seconds. I mean, 15 seconds doesn't sound like a long time, but actually when you think about it, 15 seconds is like a fairly long time in the world of sort of security and customer attention, I guess. So, I mean, I'd be interested to see how that works. But like, if I wonder if it will just be like using Apple ID on phones and things like that. But I think it will be an improvement to, you know, a lot of the situations that a lot of banks and things have now, where you have to like film yourself going, "My name's Polly and I want to open a bank account," and then like 3 hours later, someone finally says, "Yes, you are the person that you say you are." So it's always great to see things like this, ensuring, you know, security and things like that. So yeah, I think it'll be really interesting. I think having it ongoing, always really good for due diligence. And yeah, there's not really much more that I have to say. I guess in a world of AI and deepfakes as they keep going, it is quite a scary thing to think about. It's one of those things that you can't think about too much, otherwise you will start having nightmares, I think, when it comes to sort of AI and how good AI can be, especially when it comes to deepfakes. So being able to have compliant solutions that will hopefully stand up to that is great. And, you know, more regulation tools to help stay with compliance, all good. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. Just sounds great. Hope it works.
What a brilliant way to sum it up. Yeah, no, I think that is actually the best way to put it. I think if it does work, it will be very, very, very helpful, and I'm sure we'll see other organizations sort of pick it up as well. Because at the end of the day, while AI can be, like you mentioned there, Polly, a very scary technology, it can also be a great technology to protect users. And I think once you realize, or well, you know, when anyone realizes how helpful and impactful it can really be when it's in the right hands, I think that's when you know, you can probably sleep a little bit easier. But yeah, with that, why don't we go to your article?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Francis. So my article is a little bit different to what we've talked about today, but I'm kind of pairing it actually very vaguely with your article, Tom. For it's completely different in every sense of the way, but you'll see what I mean when I start talking about it. So essentially, a Herefordshire-based payment solution provider, allpay, has added a new local gift card to its range on its reward and recognition program. So basically, after positive employee feedback, allpay has introduced this local gift card for Hereford businesses as a permanent employee reward option. So HR leaders at the firm say that the card has been hugely popular, with staff from across the business issuing the local gift card as a reward. So the allpay team can now choose this gift card in exchange for points within the company's reward and recognition system. And the gift card is valid for a bunch of different businesses in and around Herefordshire, both big chains as well as independent businesses as well. And I've been to Herefordshire and they have a lot of very nice independent businesses. So I think the reason that I want to talk about this, it sounds like a really weird one, actually. It's a really, not a weird one, but like it's a bit of a twee nice little news story. It's just, gift cards for employees. But actually, I think there's a lot of kind of prongs that you can take it here. Number one being, you know, it's really interesting to see companies go into sort of rewards and incentives like this. I think that's a part of fintech that we're still kind of seeing being built up. It's, you know, having reward programs and incentive programs from a financial point of view, I think is really great. But also I think, and this is where it does relate to Tom's article very, very vaguely, in that I think this is a great example, again, of fintech doing things for their community and making a difference within their community. So obviously in Tom's piece, we saw them make a difference in community when it comes to helping domestic abuse survivors and helping them get out of those situations. And this is obviously completely different, not the same at all, much less serious. But it's showing you that a fintech is taking stock of actually what is important to their consumers, what is important to their staff, and using that to make a difference. So their staff are really enjoying paying for things and having gift cards in their local community, and now that gift card has been added to their reward and recognition program. So it's one of those things where actually I think it's a really interesting thing to see and to have, you know, the support to the community, investing back within that community, and just generally sort of listening to consumers, in this case, being their staff, and going, hey, this is a thing that we're going to do. I just thought it was a really nice one to talk about today. And even though it's probably a little bit random, and it's probably, it's not the big news story that maybe we might discuss, I just think it's just a really nice thing to see how local and hyper local, I guess, for want of a better word, because we're talking about a specific town here, that fintech can get, and how fintech can really make a difference. And maybe that difference is only just supporting the local community. Maybe that difference is just, ensuring that local businesses get a little bit of extra money when they're being paid. So I know it doesn't sound crazy, but I just think it's just such a nice thing to see. And it's a lovely thing to see people support, especially, like we were talking about with like cost of living crisis and things like that. It's just a really interesting thing for a fintech to offer. So, I mean, Francis, what do you think about this? Am I going off on one and I'm just finding something really fun for like no particular reason? Or are you like me and do you think this is a really nice thing to see fintechs really, getting into their community and supporting their community the best that they can?
It's really interesting, Polly. I think a lot of what you said when you initially told us that you were going to be bringing this article to the table, I'd made some notes on it, and I think every single one of my notes you touched on there. I think, first and foremost, I agree. I think it's a very, very cool idea. And I feel like it's especially good for those people that have an attitude of, let me work my 9 to 5 and get paid. They don't really care about their jobs that much, and they're just sort of like, I'm just here for money. I think it's a small incentive, but I think it's going to be quite effective, especially since each point that an employee earns is worth £1. And I think and again, this is where it relates to what you were saying. I think it's a very cool way in which fintechs can fill a niche of giving employees financial rewards for doing a good job, which is by far preferred over the classic and stereotypical good job Pizza Fridays that I'm sure everyone's sort of seen and heard about, and in probably many cases experienced as well. But yeah, no, I think it's a very, very interesting, or not even, interesting way of approaching to changing an employee's attitude to work by sort of saying, we will actually reward you for the good job you are doing by giving you value to spend somewhere else. You have your paycheck, and then you also have this additional money that's being able to be spent. I think it's, in my opinion, I just think it's a really, really cool way that fintech can be utilized.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I love that you're kind of on the same wavelength as me here. I think it's just really nice to see such a sort of really hyper-focused thing when it comes to both, thinking about rewarding your staff. Like, you're right, it's nice to have an actual reward for staff for once. And not just Pizza Friday or just anything like that. And I think it's sort of nice to see the local options, and it's just also really nice to see a fintech actually supporting a community like that. And I know I've said community like probably 100 times now, and you could probably turn it into a drinking game, but it's just so nice to see, especially in this sort of world of cost of living and rising costs and everyone feeling just a bit rubbish about the economy and everything else that's happening, to see a fintech double down and just go, yeah, we're going to support our community and also support our employees at the same time. It all just sounds really good to me. So Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree with the points both of you have made. I think it's a really nice addition to their staff rewards. Obviously, they've had a trial and found that it's been really popular, and honestly, you can understand why. Like, it's the type of thing that, it's a good financial reward for, positive efforts in the company while supporting the local companies. Obviously, that they're a Herefordshire-based company, which means, all of the employees are going to be living at least semi-locally. And that basically means that the areas that they're going to be spending most of the time on the weekend, they've kind of got free reign to spend this reward wherever they can, ensuring that they support local businesses and yet giving them the freedom to spend it however they want, really. And like you both said, I think most people would prefer that over the classic Pizza Fridays option. And yeah, I think it's a really good idea, and I think it's just a good way that fintech can help support the local economy, as well as just the countrywide economy. It just really encourages that spending with the smaller businesses that otherwise you might go, oh well, there's a slightly better deal on the bigger retailer or whatever. And this is just a good way to kind of keep the money with the local businesses, support those as well. And yeah, I don't have a bad thing to say about it. And hopefully it's the type of news that we might get a little bit more of as more companies decide to adopt this kind of solution to do the same thing in the areas that they're based in. So yeah, all in all, I think it's a really good idea, and I'm personally a very big fan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think there's much more to say beyond kind of what we've already said. It's just a really nice thing to see coming up in fintech and stuff that, I hope we get to see more nice. Sometimes we don't see a lot of nice news, you know what I mean? So it's nice to have just something that's a bit nice. But anyway, that does bring us to the end of our discussion today. So if you want to hear any more about what we've talked about today, or any news So if you want to hear any more about what we've talked about today or anything else from the fintech world, head over to fintechtimes.com, where there's plenty more news and insights over there. But very quickly, we will move to what I learned this week. So each week, we are learning so much new information being on the Fintech Times editorial team. So much news crosses our desks that we are learning something all the time. So we thought it'd be fun to share that with our listeners. So Francis, what have you learned this week?
I actually learnt something else from allpay this week, and that it has partnered with 2 national charities to address financial inequality and promote social value across the UK.
Sounds good to me. Love that. Tom, what have you learned this week?
This week, I saw some new figures from the FCA, which revealed that applications for registration as a crypto asset exchange or custodian wallet provider have fallen by 51% in the last 3 years in the UK. Which led to questions about whether the FCA's lengthy approval processes are hurting UK ambitions to become a leading crypto global hub. And I thought it was just a really interesting story, and it's one that you can read on the Fintech Times.
What I learned this week is that the risk of overspending in retirement is a serious issue in the UK, according to a new survey from PensionBee, with up to 20% of retirees within the UK have consistently overspent during their retirement. And there's the worry that things may even get worse, with daily living expenses such as housing costs, mortgage payments, and property maintenance also significant expenses for those retirees. So a bit of a less nice stat there. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. It has been an absolute pleasure, as always, to talk about fintech with you, and I will catch you next week.
See you guys next week.
See you guys then.
Thanks for listening to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. Don't miss next week's episode and continue the conversation using hashtag TFT News and Views, and follow us at the Fintech Times.